First is being vulnerable and being open and realizing, hey, it's okay to receive and it's okay to share if things aren't going super well. And if things are going super well, it's okay to celebrate that. You know, how many times do people always celebrate us and help us strategize because they have a lot, if not more, experience than us at a certain level to help us, go to the next stage where we need to go. There's also getting realistic about where things are in the material world versus where you see them in your mind. So I totally love the statement that we have all the answers, but unless you can develop, a free energy device to power an entire city in 5 minutes, maybe you could know that, but if that knowledge isn't validated or hasn't been validated in your life in any of your life goals, maybe certain projects take longer than you thought, maybe you're experiencing something you thought you wouldn't be experiencing, but you're experiencing it for longer than you originally intended. If you thought, oh, it'll take 3 months and it's been 8 and it's not finished. So I think there's a lot of scenarios in life where we do need other people.
I'm Autumn Bensett, founder of the Bossy Babe brand, fitness coach, and serial entrepreneur turned intuitive life and business coach. The Wealthy Babe podcast is for the ambitious, courageous, and spiritually charged up woman in network marketing, craving wealth not only in her bank account, but in every aspect of her life. Get plugged in here each week for authentic and unfiltered conversations from myself and industry leaders who are going to support you and give you all the juicy behind the scenes and real talk around business, spirituality, strong points of view, and doing shit differently. This is a safe space to come undone, be heard, and be given permission to rewrite your own damn rules. So here we go. So hi and hello everyone. I am so excited about the guest that I have here with me today. We have been chatting for a little while and he is probably one of the most fascinating people that I've had on this show yet. And I'm really, really excited for you to get in on this conversation and just to get to know him and what he's here to do and what his work is. So before we dive all the way in to this epic conversation that I think is going to happen, I think it's going to be very powerful for all of you who are either starting entrepreneurship or you have been doing this for a little while, but maybe you have been struggling to really implement spirituality, like we were talking about, like on a practical level, and be able to carry this through your life and have it be an embodiment where you can coexist with the people around you as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit deeper about this, but I want the humans to first get to know who you are. So can you maybe share a little bit more on like the basic level of like, what is your work? What's the deeds, like, what are you here to do in this world? And who do you usually serve with it?
Sure, Adam, that's a great introduction. Thank you. And hi, humans.
Hi, humans.
So I'm one of you, at least I think so. So it's funny starting off with the words I think as a reply to that comment, because the work that I do, I use the word magic a lot, and right away in my book I define it as the science of applied consciousness. So the book's called Magic is Real, and I actually left these lights on a twinkle stream to show how even if we take the science of psychic abilities, the science of energy healing with all the documentation out there, and say, as Arthur C. Clarke said, magic is technology we don't understand yet. Just as you and I were talking before the show, we talked on something, pretty high vibey, and these lights, which were on just a continuous non-flashing, they just stayed yellow circuit. They instantly shifted to this rotation circuit. So, sometimes magic can be more far out. Sometimes it can be more spectacular, like, more approaching fairy tales. I haven't seen levitating elephants yet, but, life is long. So the type of work that I do, I've had a lot of experience starting 13 different companies. I'm running 2 right now. I've done a lot of deep diving into many different spiritual practices and traditions. And I've studied with a lot of masters living in regular human bodies. And at least from my perspective, and those of a few other teachers I work with, beings that you could call divine, you could call spirit guides, angels, archangels, ascended masters, things like that. And along those lines, one of the things I realize is there's a huge schism in the world. And that schism is the people who are, spiritual in it fully and people who are not. And, you could look at this as muggles and witches, or, maybe even 30 years ago, people who were in a monotheistic Abrahamic religion like Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and people who weren't, and even within those two faiths. So the idea of working and talking with people who have a different belief system is nothing new to humankind. I mean, there have been wars fought over it. But the work that I really do is helping people expand their capacities and live to a much greater level of what they're capable of as human beings. So deconstructing that, what does that mean? Well, we know a lot about the body. I mean, there's so many textbooks, they're always being rewritten. As far as the mind goes, we know more about that. And I live here in San Francisco Bay Area, so there's a lot of cutting edge research on those things as well. But as far as defining the spirit, defining spirituality, that's been a lot looser, because generally spirituality covers the realm of immaterial. And the idea of energy, like the human biofield energy healing, some of us are absolutely convinced it's a thing and we are energy beings and the energy compresses into physical matter. And we know the science, and we know an energy healing session, what it can do, and also realistically what in most cases it can't do. And for other people, that's wishful thinking or pseudoscience. So the work that I do is helping people who really want to take a deeper spiritual element into their life and have it fully integrated as much as possible. So that might mean taking a practice of manifestation like the law of attraction and really zeroing in on how to get it to work and what it can and can't do. That might be, as I mentioned, with energy healing. You can talk about spirit guides. Psychic perceptions and developing intuition is something I get a lot of requests for. So I do a lot of work one-on-one with people. I do a lot of workshop work. And while I do individual sessions, the most powerful work that comes is when people reach out and say, David, I really want to tie together everything in my life that I've learned, all of the best self stuff that I know about myself, and I want to take that to a level of mastery. And that's how I really like to serve with people over the course of about a year or so, where we can really be committed and go deep and see you in a lot of different scenarios, because sometimes life is challenging, sometimes life is smooth. And if we only reach out for help, if we only reach out for support when we are, completely in the dark of something, or, things aren't going super well, what about when things are going well and we want to keep them going well? So I really work across the board. And if people ask, well, what are the nuts and bolts of it? There's a lot. In this incarnation at 35, I started studying the personal growth and spiritual development field at 12. So I can't honestly say I've been doing this work for 23 years. And in it, there's therapy, there's coaching, there's healing methods. I prefer to use the term mentoring because that's kind of all encompassing and it's positive and forward thinking. But there's so many techniques out there and tools and strategies and, processes and maps. I'm just really grateful to serve and, offer people whatever they need to get where they'd like to go, or find out what that is if it's not clear.
You said that so beautifully. Like, thank you so much for sharing such magic. I'm curious, like, I hear all of this, right? And I hear such, like, it's so profound and it's so deep. Like, this might be something that somebody's listening to and they're like, what? Like, what are these things? And then there might be people who are listening and they're like, oh, I get this. I've been studying some of this for myself for a while. I'm curious, like, how did David get here? Like, what brought you here to say, this is my calling and this is what I want to do? You've built 13 different companies. What makes this the path? Like, how did you get into all of this work? I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, tell me more.
Tell me more, tell me more.
Exactly.
There's a few stages, Autumn. The first stage was curiosity. The second stage was decision, and the third stage was development, where I'm in now. So just kind of going more quickly through the first two, curiosity. I think a lot of us at a younger age are excited about magic. There's fantasy, Harry Potter, all that stuff all over the place. And in my earlier teenage years, I was really just drawn to the subject matter. But when I was 14 and giving tarot readings to, older people and people who had a life experience, who had a lot of information and readings in the past, and receiving all these compliments in my intuition, that struck a chord. And I would go at overnight camp and people would have sinus infections and I would put my hands on their head, and what to do, the instruction just came and my hands felt warm and they said they felt a magnetic pulse, and the sinus infection went away in a matter of hours and headaches went away in a matter of minutes. So as I was growing up and, looking into more things, I realized, oh, there's actually a lot of science behind what consciousness can do. There's a ton of science on a subject matter called remote viewing, where people look into essentially through space and time. Like, what are the contents of a sealed envelope? Or can you draw a picture of the coordinates at this latitude and longitude? Most of us don't memorize how that system works. But the government has put a lot of money into this. There's a lot of studies, a lot of protocols for these things. And then now in the modern days, there's a lot of authors like Larry Dossey, Joe Dispenza, Dean Radin, Dr. Sue Morter, who are physicians, who are PhDs, who are scientists, who have credibility and their career on the line. And they talk about this whole world of, the human bioenergetic field with chakras and auras and everything else. They even talk about, spirits, essentially consciousness that can survive outside of or independent of a physical body. Dr. Larry Dossey and Dr. Gary Schwartz have great books that talk about reincarnation, how as a core identity, our soul, essence, spirit, whatever word feels most comfortable in the moment, lives multiple lifetimes. Those memories can be recalled, and there's a lot of interesting data supporting that. So in this phase of development, how I got here is when I came to Silicon Valley. I grew up and lived most of my life in Michigan. I really wanted just to be gung-ho. I'm like, I'm going to start an AI company. That's all the rage right now. I'm going to make it and network with VCs. And just from pushing so hard and being really out of tune with myself, not listening to my intuition for a while, getting so caught up in the world, I got to a place where my health was really failing. And somebody who was a very well-known and successful investor in this area, right after we did yoga together, they said, you should really see my energy healer. And I thought, okay, if somebody at this level says it, either it's really legit or they're a little bit kooky and they waste their money because they have so much of it. But I did remember as a much younger, studying some of the science and also a bit more as I got older. So, fast forward, I receive a bunch of healing sessions. I feel what's going on. I'm getting better. I find out this person has a school. I enroll in that school. I realized, at least for her, there is an economic model that could be self-sustaining, and you could run a business in the spiritual field. And I thought, okay, if you can run a business in the spiritual field, are you actually giving value? And all the people around me, I saw there were huge transformations. Now, if that wasn't enough, on the practical side, I also had a lot of trippy mystical things happen. And what I'm about to share is from things I recollect, usually with other people seeing it. Some people get triggered or say this is a claim or this is bullshit, but just, food for thought. There are a number of instances that were very clear telekinesis, very clear telepathy, very clear and very specific, not vague precognition. It's easy to have a horoscope that's as vague as possible that somebody could think applies to 1/12 of the world's population, which is very different from knowing, oh, you'll meet somebody with red hair tomorrow and they'll be a really good friend if you don't have any current good friends who have red hair, and that ends up happening. But I had instances of summoning and banishing significant storms within 5 to 10 minutes, light coming out of my hand, big deal things over and over that seem to violate the Newtonian laws of physics that we grow up learning are like the laws of how the universe works that can't be violated, which of course anytime a new law is discovered, the old ones are often revised or reconsidered to include it. So what I realized over this time is my biggest passion was a viable career field, but for it to really make an impact, it had to include the credibility of the science stuff. And it could stretch beyond it a little bit, but if you're thinking about, how does this impact the world? We all want to make the world a better place. Maybe some of us want to clean up the oceans, regrow the forests, bring more peace in the world, help solve the water and the hunger and the political issues that are going on, whatever each person's mission is. And during the research phase, which is kind of ongoing, but in the deep dive to see, does this make sense as a career path beyond a hobby or something to heal, I realized that there's a researcher named Jeffrey Martin. And Jeffrey was the #1 Reiki person in the country. He sold his first software company at 14. And he used his freedom in life, essentially, to study so many mystical traditions and practices. And he found a number of practices that most of the time got people to an enlightened state. And he went on to describe that this enlightened state is a very sanitized, secular, neurological pattern of activity. like, oh wow, most people can grasp their hands on it. You're not talking about traditions or vows or shaving your head and becoming a celibate monk in a monastery for 40 years, which was, my fear of going into this field. But he said, if you do enough of the right types of work, the shift will happen. You'll be less, if not zero, emotionally reactive. If you choose to have emotions, you can rest in love and joy, and you can choose to live in the world and work on a mission, but you're not attached to story. Meaning that if somebody cuts you off in traffic, I know it's an example I use all the time, but he used even more extreme examples of parents losing a child. And he said, even in extreme life circumstances, people who maintain the practices have been able to maintain their enlightenment. And I thought, wow, how many problems in the world would this solve? How much violence, how much desperation, how much irrationality is part of the decisions we make to poor living. There's a ton of times when, I'm out and about, I'm in San Francisco, I get something that's recyclable or compostable, and I don't take the time to take it with me home because I don't see a recycling or a compost nearby, I just threw it away. And that's taking effort to do something you care about. So when I heard about this, and for anybody who's curious, I'm not directly affiliated, but the website is finderscourse.com. And a book describing a lot of what I said and going beyond is called The Finders by Dr. Jeffrey Martin. So if you think about what spirituality means to you, and me thinking about what spirituality means to me, it was helping to live a more fulfilling and liberated life. If people want to go along a path towards whatever definition of enlightenment they feel comfortable with, cool. If people like the idea of gaining mystical powers because it's really inspirational, cool, just use those with maturity and be realistic about, they take a lot of time to develop and they don't look like, the CGI things we see in the movies. And a lot of times spirituality gives deeper meaning in life. It gives a sense of purpose, which is really, really huge. And a lot of the mystical skills, being able to tune in psychically, intuitively, being able to feel your energy body, knowing what foods are right or not for you, what events, what people, even how conversation should go, I think gives a huge advantage over not having to think and analyze so much. When you can just shift into that rested, embodied knowing, it's really liberating. So there's a lot more I could say, but just to wrap the element of why this field, there were a couple moments when I had a really clear mission come in, and this was partially when my book Magic is Real was being written, but once when I was studying at a mystery school in Italy. They follow a tradition that they say they got from the continent Atlantis, and they have people who reportedly have been able to visit Atlantis through space and time. I know this is super woo, and it's probably
I love it.
1,000 steps beyond energy healing for anybody listening, but take it with a grain of salt. Maybe the Western science will be there to validate it in X number of years. And I was staring at a huge statue of Horus, the Egyptian god of light. And I asked, kind of mentally, how can I serve? And at that moment, there was nobody outside in their outside temple. I wasn't screaming or speaking. My body language, was just standing still. And a huge gong went off in a bell tower right behind me when I asked that question. And I got the impression to, meditate every day and start a school. And I thought, wow, that was a huge synchronicity. It could have been a random coincidence, but moments like that with, significant deep thoughts that still feel true, not just an idea on a whim, kind of land with me. And then, just 2 weeks ago, I was really deeply connecting with Lakshmi, which if you believe in deity, it's the goddess of wealth and abundance. If you don't believe in deity or have a different view, you could say it's an aspect of your higher self that certain cultures anthropomorphize into what they would call a goddess. Both definitions can fit, although I have one that I prefer. And there was conversation between me and that aspect of self / Lakshmi. There was dialogue, there were agreements, and as soon as it finished, my friend Jimmy called me, somebody who I hadn't talked with in about 8 or 9 months. And he said, hey, David, I'm working with the High Priestess of Bali, the highest ranking spiritual official out there. She wants to build a Lakshmi temple in LA. You've talked about moving to LA. You've written about building a Lakshmi temple. Do you want to be involved? I thought, that's huge. So, it's really awesome having these life experiences. And it's also really awesome hearing about people like Dr. William Bigston, who will routinely take mice in Ivy League University peer-reviewed research settings, and the mice will be double injected with a lethal dose of cancer. He'll do hands-on healing, no biochemical invasiveness, no radiation, no devices up the sleeve, and the tumors vanish in the mice. and you can see photos to show it. So there's a whole world of things that are possible when we incorporate this vast umbrella of spirituality. So while I care about these big missions like building temples, building new city of Atlantis, spreading awareness of stuff around the world, I also think, as human beings, there's amazing things that we can do. And maybe AI and robots will take most of the jobs that we know of right now. And in 30, 40 years, maybe if we still need or want jobs, they'll be related to this type of thing. Maybe not, but I just see a lot of usefulness, and not a lot of fun, and a lot of joy and a liberation, being dedicated professionally to spirituality.
There is, like, I'm just fascinated. If anyone watches this in the video form, they're gonna be like seeing me just like it's so like zoned into you speaking on your craft and speaking your truth. And I believe, like, I have full body belief in everything that you speak about, because I truly believe in the power of energy. I truly believe in the power of this work, and I am in, like, I'm not at by any means of the level in which you are, but there's things that I've dipped my toes into, like we were kind of talking about, and I see it, I get it, I feel it. But now you're at this like exponential space. Like, you have done so much work, you have worked with so many mentors, and you can see, I love your mission. Like, I love that you have this big grand vision of like the work that you want to do on such a deep level, and also paying note to how important it is on a, I don't want to, well, I guess a practical level, like on a day-to-day level for human beings in their day-to-day life that are navigating jobs and businesses and families and personal life and loss and all of the things, and providing them with these tools and providing them with the support. So then even on a, I always say, like, the small things are like the big things, because those small daily movements, like you had, like you had this one moment and it led to something so much bigger. And so when we are able to create that space to have like those small moments of growth and alignment and really knowing ourselves and being able to align with this energy, like, they make up the big picture. That's how we make the big moves in the world. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. Like, I'd love to talk a little bit more about this practical side, and how I'm trying to think, like, how do we even dive it, because it's such a big topic. But is there something or a way that you find that people are coming to you with, and they're like, this is where I'm really struggling implementing it from, like, I'm drawn to spirituality. This is something that I can do when things are good. I can do when things are working really well. But in all these other instances, I'm really struggling to embody and integrate this into a being, into like a full body. I just carry this out in all aspects of my life. This is like totally like a side note, but there was this kind of how I was relating it to me in my head, how I was channeling through as I was reading something. It was probably like, I don't know, something trash on online, but it was something about Kate Middleton, and it was this example between her from when she was first starting in her journey as a royal, and then where she is now, and that confidence and way that she holds it. And somebody had mentioned it's just who she is, and it's this embodiment that I think we all crave, and we want to be able to carry out, like you were talking about, if there's a loss, if there's a great moment, if we have whatever it might look like in our life. So I'd love to kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit and talk a little bit more about implementing this and embodying more practical strategy or spirituality. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely, Autumn.
Yeah.
Well, in considering comparing spirituality to other elements of our life that we develop, if we have a fitness goal and we haven't been reaching it, or we're unclear of how to get there, or even how to structure it, we, often get support. We might get a personal trainer, we might go to courses if we want to develop a language or a professional skill, same thing. So with spirituality, I think the most important thing is first think about, what do you want? What's your most important priority? Do you want a path? Do you want somebody that you can talk to? Do you want to heal from certain emotional experiences that have been unresolved, whether you call them traumas or not? Do you want to build certain skills? Do you want to build language fluency? Do you want support figuring out a meditation practice? So I think getting really clear on what your top goals are makes a lot of sense. With a lot of fitness goals, if you have an aggressive one, it might take 5 to 10 hours a week. And when I talk with people and I'm like, oh, hey, what's your meditation practice? What's your spiritual life? The most common response I get is, oh, I read a couple books and I meditate, 15, 20 minutes a day when I can, but it's not that big. And I'm not sure I want to make it that big, but I think it's really cool. Like, okay, I think having a good functional body is cool too, but I know it can take time to put in. So it really depends on, the why behind the what, especially if you look at, Simon Sinek and everything he said about, our why. So, really looking deep within yourself, and, you, Adam, and also anybody who's listening or tuning in or reading or watching, um, if you think about your primary goal and the why behind that goal, that's the driver before, you reach out to me through magicalgoldenage.com, or through anybody that you feel drawn to work with based on, fit, qualifications, background, stuff like that. So as a general map, in kind of a one size fits all, I'd say, treat it honestly like any other goal. A lot of us have goal setting systems and structures we've been exposed to or that we work with that we know work well for us. So if the first part of the goal is like a wish list, like all the things you want in life, you can do that for spirituality. Personally, just to, show under the hood a little bit, I care to have a 3-hour daily meditation practice. There's about 4 types of meditations I like to do for different purposes. Generally Zen, manifestation, holding a beautiful, rich, loving presence, working on healing and being of service to others, and then doing, certain out-of-body things and certain areas of healing myself. So a couple of those overlap, but 3 hours a day is a huge thing. So right now I'm building up my time each day. Sometimes I get 3 hours, sometimes I get 2, sometimes I'm at an hour and a half. Some days are just very busy, and I know that taking the time because of the uncertain things that required, time in other areas that came up, I'd have to maybe compromise on my goal that day. So it's thinking about, overall, where you want to get to. Is it a time thing or is it a results thing? How is the results measured? If there's a curiosity of, well, what is my spiritual path? How do I define it? Is there a certain tradition? Is it this version of Buddhism? Is it that version of Hinduism? Is it something I make up? Is it something like the Golden Dawn where there's practitioners and groups worldwide? So I think getting really clear on that also makes a lot of sense. What's the right fit? A lot of us today grew up in a world where there's all this negative stuff against religion, but if we're really truthful with ourselves, most of the negative stuff is about individual practitioners who were involved in a scandal, and we heard one snippet of the entire story. We don't even know if that snippet was fully accurate of the whole picture, but we're left thinking, oh, religion is X or religious people are Y. And I feel that that's really unfortunate. Doing something religiously, one interpretation is you're very focused, you're very mindful, you're very present, and you do things a certain way. In a ritualistic fashion, a lot of rituals are part of religion, and vice versa. It's like you light the incense, you light the candle, you say the words, you do a thing. That's a ritual. So in thinking about what makes it easy for the brain to get into these practices, with the gym, it's easy. Like you plan your meals, you travel, or you put it on YouTube or something if you're doing it at home. You have your workout clothes, you warm up, you work out, you cool down, you shower, you eat, and then you stretch or rest and get on with your day. So for spirituality, it can be something that you compartmentalize, like meditations, but other goals, like always coming from like soulful presence and living and speaking from your true, full, deep, authentic self, and not letting the chattering mind that is often anxious and always demanding for more and more and more, not to let that drive you. To always be resting in love and empathy and compassion. These are all spiritual practices and they can take time. Energy healing and all that other stuff is great, but not all of us are called to develop those skills. You could learn how to heal with energy really, really well, but if your need for that isn't huge in life, there's less of a purpose in you investing time there compared to just finding a good energy healer and experiencing that with them and spending your time developing some other skill. And another goal that I have is anytime I encounter somebody who I would say isn't, best friend material, and just a clear example, I'm just going to completely make somebody up. Their name, I'll say Devin. I've regularly been interacting with somebody named Devin, who's a very angry and demanding and confronting person. And I have the option when we talk to hold love and maturity and kindness and alignment and not have those interactions affect me energetically, emotionally, or otherwise, and also not back down. This isn't a relationship I can easily end or take away, and at some point know what I want to. So, you could say it's a spiritual practice to see that as a gift, whether you bring in language of soul contracts for people who are familiar, or law of attraction, if you want to use that lens. You could just say, it's life. How is it a gift to improve my practice, to have a loving, kind presence conversation with somebody who's being belligerent and very difficult? And I think that type of a practice, you could say, well, that isn't spiritual. That's positive psychology. That's just being mature. That's having character. So, a lot of this stuff is how you define it. But we hear so much that we're mind, body, and spirit. So if we're taking that definition and we're not including spirit in 33% of our life, if we want to take that definition literally, there's more expansiveness we can take in.
Again, oh my gosh, this is just so powerful and so digestible. I feel like this is things that anybody can listen to this and say, okay, I can resonate with this and I can understand this and I can start to take and apply this. And now there's something that I was curious about. I want to kind of come back to this too, but there was something you had mentioned a little bit earlier and I was like, oh, I need to ask about this. I need to talk about this. And you were talking about how you work with some of your clients for sometimes a year. You were talking about how they go through these different seasons, and it's about navigating these things together. And also the other message was like, we know the way, right? Like inside of us, like we know our way, and you like helping in that container, correct me if I was wrong, but like in that container, it was the people that have mastered their craft and they want to take it to another level. And now I'm kind of curious on how you perceive this idea around coaching and around support and around what you do and how you help people to be that support system and be that mirror and hold space for them, while also saying, you know your way and you don't need me, but I get to have this space for you and I get to hold this for you. Because I find that this is something that I fully believe in and I use in my own teachings. Like I believe my clients know the way. I believe that I am here to help bring that out of them. And also I find that there's, and not that it's right or wrong, but I definitely find like this rise of almost pulling away from support, almost pulling away from doing that, because it's like, but I have the answers. I have it. I can do it. And we can. But where is that pull and like that connection in being able to say, like, I know the way and also I can receive support and have that person there? Does that make sense?
That's a great question, Autumn. That's something I used to experience a lot. And there's a few things, and I'll try to touch on them a little bit. So the first is being vulnerable and being open and realizing, hey, it's okay to receive and it's okay to share if things aren't going super well. And if things are going super well, it's okay to celebrate that. How many times do people always celebrate us and help us strategize because they have a lot, if not more experience than us at a certain level to help us, go to the next stage where we need to go. There's also getting realistic about where things are in the material world versus where you see them in your mind. So I totally love the statement that we have all the answers, but unless you can develop, a free energy device to power an entire city in 5 minutes, maybe you could know that, but if that knowledge isn't validated or hasn't been validated in your life, in any of your life goals, maybe certain projects take longer than you thought, maybe you're experiencing something you thought you wouldn't be experiencing, but you're experiencing it for longer than you originally intended. If you thought, oh, it'll take 3 months and it's been 8 and it's not finished. So I think there's a lot of scenarios in life where we do need other people, and even choosing the right language is really key here. Saying need, a lot of us feel like, oh, is that speaking from lack? Is that speaking from I'm not strong enough, I'm not sufficient enough? But most of us, and I'm saying most, like the average person, even if you're well developed, if you're on the path, if you take care of yourself, we need healthy nutrition. That means we need farmers. That means we need truck drivers. That means we need literally all the people involved in the food supply chain to get that stuff to us. Like every person who works at every store and all their friends and family who support them so they can continue working at that store, right? The person who brought gas to the gas station where they filled up their car to drive to work. So we're an interdependent species. And working with somebody, requesting help, requesting support is never a negative. This is really easy to see in the health field. If you're walking down the street and you trip and you break your leg, likely you will need help getting your leg to be healed by people who are professional in that area. If you want to learn a new skill and there's somebody who's been developing that skill for 5-10 years beyond you, you can accelerate a lot faster by working with them. So I'd say it really depends on the context, and if somebody's considering, well, should I reach out to David or, this other person I met, recently, look within. And this is just a simple exercise in intuition. And just ask yourself, is it a yes or no? And if it's a yes, then just take action and, watch as things unfold. If it's a no, then don't take action. And if at either a yes or a no, if there's not total stillness or if there's a lot of chattering voice, just very calmly and patiently ask why. And I often feel that the difference between intuition and imagination for most of us is imagination or the scattered mind will keep throwing different answers, different responses. But intuition, what Dr. Sue Morter calls the soulful self, like your true embodied knowing, that answer will stay consistent. It will stay present. That doesn't mean you have to act. That doesn't mean the world will end if you don't act, in most cases. But it's actually a really simple process. And it can be really an element of discovery. If somebody's like, David, I really like the idea of growing and strengthening in all these ways. I don't say I have anything major to heal. I'm pretty happy with my life. I'm curious about these things. I just feel called to talk with you and practice and study and learn with you and work with you and build more routine and everything else. But I don't really have any clear goals yet. Then our time should go in figuring out what those should be to a point where you're really happy, really excited, really joyful. Maybe it's bringing back a sense of play and delightfulness that you used to have as a kid, but you don't feel right now. Maybe it's looking at biochemistry and supplements in a way that you haven't looked at before that can give your life a certain edge, a certain sparkle, a certain energy, a certain peace. Maybe it's talking about magical theory and all the science of this because you're seeing a lot more people wake up and mention certain types of things and you want to know what those things make sense and also what doesn't make sense, what you shouldn't spend time on. So there's so many areas that this type of work that I do can go into. There's one person I'm working with. I'll call him Larry. He has wanted to start a new type of career for a while, and he's also wanted to develop personally in certain ways for a while. And anytime he sets time frames, he kind of will end up going and looking back and saying, well, I didn't hit those time frames, but I grew in other ways. So that was a matter of discipline and focus and going deep into the ego, going deep into the subconscious and the spirit of what's the resistance for being focused? What is the root of procrastination? Why do things or drama come up that derail us if we really consider it in maybe a type of pattern? There's somebody I met a while back who found me through a video I posted on levitation of all things. And I'll call her Janice. And Janice was in a relationship. She knew the relationship wasn't good for her, but she wanted to stay in it for certain personal reasons. And she also wanted to move across the country and start a whole new career. So a lot of the discussions we were doing were about the energy of relationships, the science of, attachment theory, how you can be, fully nourished and secure versus needy or clingy. And also thoughts of just, basic career planning or even advanced career planning of making all those shifts. So while I don't claim to be a relationship coach or a certified nutritionist, spirituality goes so deep into the core of our life experience that it can touch on and affect many areas. And I'm always quick to admit when I'm not an expert in something. Like I haven't had a lot of experience or exposure and education in women's monthly cycles. And so I'll right away say, I probably don't have a lot to say about that. But if somebody reaches out to me with something like that, or anything else, like somebody who say is missing both their legs. I haven't worked with a lot of people who are double amputees. There's always a possibility of tuning in psychically and offering something very rich, very significant, very real. And often that'll happen. People will message me on Instagram, send me their photo, ask for a reading, say nothing else. I don't scan their page. I don't read any posts. I might see their name if it's displayed, and I'll tune into them and I'll give them a free reading for 1 to 3 minutes when I do those things. And a lot of people say, wow, that brought chills up my spine. That was so specific. That really made something clear. When can we get on the phone? So it's fun and it feels really wholesome to do this work. And it also feels really wholesome to serve in bigger ways. A lot of people also, support this work through donations or through kind words if they don't feel called to work with me directly. But really liked the idea of having humanity brought forward into, you know, a new golden age, just a better, brighter space with more spirituality in it that is an honest reflection of each person's own unique, authentic expression. Maybe that's part of a tradition, maybe it's not, but just helping the world be a brighter, happier place.
I'm like, I love everything that you say. But it really was a beautiful description and example and way that we can be able to see, okay, there is space for us to say, I know my way, and I know, and I can tune into what I need. And also I can have support, and I can lean on. I don't have to go about this myself. I don't have to resist allowing space for me to learn and expand. And I think there's so many different beautiful ways that we can do that, like you mentioned. But I think that's a lot of permission for anybody who's sitting here and maybe is in that moment. Because I was in a moment like that earlier this year, and I was like, but I know the way. And so therefore I need to like push aside like any kind of, you know, support, because I got it. And I think that there are moments in our life when we can do that, where it's okay to, you know, maybe tune in and say like, I need to hear me for the first time in my life. Like I need to hear me. But there's also space to reintegrate when you get that clarity again and be able to say, but now I know, now that I've heard me, I've listened and I've tuned in. Now I know what I want, and I can go and accurately go and get the aligned support that I need that can actually support. They're not from a space of, and I kind of wanted to go into this for a second, not the space that I need this, like you were saying, yes, like that we'll need people to help support us in different ways. Like we can't get our groceries usually by ourselves unless you're out like farming and you know, growing all your food yourself. Like we need other people. There's people that help pump gas into our cars. Like we can't drive them without that. And also there had been this feel or this need of like, I need something outside of me. I need wealth to be XYZ. I need like success equals this. And so anyways, there's all these like, when I've been going through with alchemy, and I've been going through my own healing process over the past, I'd say probably 5 months or so now, and I've been going through this on my own, a lot of deep healing and a lot of restoration. I know those were some of the words that you had brought up too, in when you were speaking about what you do. And there's been so much deep healing, and there's been so much restoration around myself and the way that I thought things had to be to equal wealth or equal success or equal happiness. And it did lead in many different times. I mean, gosh, it's in my chart. I have like success in my chart. Like I'm a Virgo. Like there's so much in me that has craved that, and I'm totally transparent in it. It's like I'm human too. Like there's so much of that transparent, or that what am I saying? So much in my chart, so much in me that craves or desires that success, and knowing I'm making a difference, and knowing I'm moving forward, and the hard work and the hustle and the yada yada yada. And so anyways, I'm digressing. I know that something that you do is you help I don't want to say speed it up, but you help to have shifts in healing around that type of a thing, around helping having deeper healing in their stress, or kind of going through burnout and overwhelm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was kind of what I was getting from it. And I'm like, I can resonate with this. This is something that I feel like my business has been going through over the past few months, is a lot of like, I'm resisting this. Like I'm resisting this change. I'm resisting this download. I'm resisting this transformation. I'm resisting like what's being called to me. I'm resisting that level because I want to know, like I want to have the control. I want to have it be my way. I want to have it be the way that I desire to be. And again, I'm being totally honest, you guys, like I speak on spirituality, and also I'm human. So these things happen, but anyways, again, I keep digressing, but I'm going through this process myself, and I've noticed it has started happening since I started in alchemy. And it was like this deeper knowing that just started, my frequency started raising, my channel started clearing, and it just started raising and raising up. And so it's come with a lot of deep work in the process. It's come with a lot of releasing. It's come with a lot of opening up, a lot of shadows, a lot of real truths. And I think that that's something that we deny and we try to run away from because it's the hard work. I mean, I was talking to my boyfriend actually today or yesterday, I can't remember. And I was like, we're both sober, and we've been sober for over a couple years now. And I had a moment, I'm like, you know what? I remember back when like we weren't like that. It was so easy just to like numb out the hard shit. And it was so easy just to go and live a different life. And you could just, you know, be surrounded by other people who got it. And they were also complaining about the things going on in their life. And it's such a different process and life journey to be so aware and so awakened, and to say like, I'm here for all of this
Mhm.
in every capacity. And also when you're running a business and you're doing the things and you're on a spiritual journey, it can be a lot, and it can feel like everything sometimes is like working against you, and it can be overwhelming. So long story long, how do you suggest, or how do you go about this, or how do you support people moving through these types of transitions?
Well, just for you directly, I'd like to offer you, if you'd like it, a free session, either for you or for you and your partner
Oh, that
after
would be
the show.
amazing. That would be
Yeah,
amazing.
just so we can go like zero in personal for what you're going through. Um, and to answer globally, yeah, I see you and I see your light, and I love what you're doing, you know, in and for the world, and I completely believe in you, Autumn. So
Oh
yeah,
my gosh, I can receive that. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for offering that. I would love
yeah,
that.
my pleasure.
Oh, I'd love that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the world, you know, it's you bring up a really great point. Like we can numb, we can escape, or we can deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different philosophies out there, and I think we really have to look within of, you know, why do we choose the path that we choose? You know, I have a friend whose sister is in AA, and she told her sponsor that she smoked a joint on a landmark with some friends like 2 weeks ago, but that didn't restart habitual use for her. And my friend's sister was totally fine about it, but her sponsor, you know, freaked out and said, "Oh, you know, you have to reset your days." So I think the attitude towards all of this stuff really depends on what is our goal, what is our history, and also what's our biology. You know, there's all these thoughts and stories and possible judgments, but for some of us, our biology can take certain things. You know, I used to have wonderful, powerful healing sessions with psychedelics, and I don't take them anymore because they destabilize me. You know, I used to achieve so much healing and so much growth, even with a microdose of something. And now, especially that I can get in those higher states through meditation, I, you know, don't even need those, even though people say they can be sacred plant medicines used properly, and I've talked a lot about that. But you know, if you think about, you said something that really landed that I also heard recently this week, is the more aware we get, the more aware we are of, oh wow, there's more to do, there's more to fix, there's more to
Yeah.
work on. And you know, think about it maybe like your tattoos. You know, how long did this tattoo on your left arm take you?
Oh, that took definitely quite a few different sessions. Yeah. Many,
Right.
many
So
hours.
like
Yeah.
every session, every minute, every time they were on a different stroke or a different component, you know, you knew there was an end in sight, but it might have seemed endless in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, one model, and I just want to shift modes a bit because I want to speak from my own experience here. And I also want to detach from my own story. So I'm going to shift my consciousness just a bit. So whatever pattern we choose to act in is a pattern we reinforce. And if it serves us to have a pattern where we're fully engaged and constantly processing and seeing transformation as a struggle, that will be our experience. If we have an encoding within us that completely detaching and disassociating from everything and immersing in the flow of another activity, whatever that involves, is healthy for us and builds us in all the other ways of happiness and productivity, that's the story we're going to live. And everything really ultimately comes to cause and effect. You know, we can look at the idea of limiting beliefs. Oh, I should do this thing. Oh, I shouldn't live that way. Oh, my life constantly means I have to clear and learn all the energy and breathwork techniques. So if I feel an emotion, I can just push it out or process it or love it. And I can't do these old things, but I miss them. And I also, part of me wants to do them. So there's this struggle. And in choosing a life path, we need to really get real with ourselves of, is that choice something that really serves us, that is right for us, or are we forcing it? And if we force it, it makes sense that resentment could stay in the equation. So it's actually not hard to change a belief on something. There's a very excellent technique I learned from Master Justin Fairman that I'm not really allowed to reteach in public, but essentially alluding to using a mix of EMDR and working with the brainstem and the vagus nerve. And he teaches a course called Flow Mastery where he goes into it in detail. And it's essentially a way of deprogramming limiting beliefs, such as I have to feel all of my pain all the time. That's a belief. You know, feeling pain is one way of processing it, but it's also a way of magnifying it. It's also a way of reestablishing that neural circuit. You know, you schedule a whole day, you schedule all these activities. Some things take longer, there's interruptions, you're tired, your body needs extra care, and then you have 2 hours worth of stuff scheduled that wasn't done, and you have to choose to sacrifice it, outsource it, or reschedule it and shift your vision. And if you can do that with just stillness of, oh, okay, now I have to find a time, okay, Thursday, this will now get done Thursday. And it could just be that 5 seconds, or it could be, oh my gosh, I need to improve. I can't believe it took so long. I need to get stronger. I need to not feel the need to get stronger. I know I can do this. I have the strength to overcome this challenge, right? And we can make all this story about that. You know, when I get in spaces like this is a rich state of consciousness for me to be in. And it's also one I am choosing to practice more. You know, this is, you could say it's more akin to like the armchair guru state of consciousness, which is funny. You know, that's a funky criticism, but that phrase came from people who would speak to groups and then live outside of that state. And it was a derogatory phrase, as opposed to saying, hey, we're human, we're allowed to have experiences, we're professionals, we're building skills. As a professional, I can be in this state for an hour a day, 3 hours a day, and as that neural wiring and as that mind repatterning comes, this eventually can be fixed. And when it's fixed, am I, you know, considered enlightened like Eckhart Tolle, or just a guy who speaks more slowly? You know, and do I care about that? And does it matter? And can it be validated in an MRI? You know, so really, really getting deep within yourself of, you know, where are you coming from? What state are you living in and present from? And are there certain things, certain patterns, certain people, certain beliefs which take you to, you know, you could say lower states where you're more reactive and struggling, and certain ones where you take you to your higher self. You know, the biggest element of this and the scariest one is related to ego death. You know, I've had 2 near-death experiences and a number of other ego deaths, surrendering to the void, surrendering to unity consciousness, becoming one with the all. And, you know, in puberty, we surrender a self kind of unwillingly and a new self comes about, and it's pretty obvious. When we have a birthday, it's a clear cut, you know, like we were a self associated with a number, that self now it only exists in memory. Now we're a different self. Maybe nothing else changes, maybe a lot does, right? And there's all these other markers. So when you, as a being, however you want to call yourself or whatever you want, however you want to define that, feel a different self to shift into, your old self will be going away. And that is death, in a sense. You know, that is a version of death. And the ego is terrified as crap about death, and it resists it. So it throws all this stuff. It's like, oh, you know, here's this old pattern, and I have a really great way of dealing with this pattern. You call it immature, but you'll feel better. And you do that pattern, and you stay in that ego, and that ego stays alive. So there's this concept of surrender. And it was in Doctor Strange, and it's like my favorite line of the movie, where Doctor Strange said, we get more powerful by surrendering to it. That doesn't make any sense. And she says, not everything does. Not everything has to. Surrender your ego, Stephen, and your power will rise. And that may not be an exact quote, but really, really feeling into what does it mean to surrender a part of your ego and allow that part to die. And I'm not talking about or encouraging suicide in any way here, of course, but this is just a maturation, a growth, a shifting of self. You know, our cells, most of us, our cells die and new ones are made and new ones are formed. You know, it's just, it's a word with so many meanings now that we have to really define the meaning that we're in. And so as you're feeling your old self with your old habits and patterns and coping strategies and strength, and the new self you're coming into, it's actually really helpful to define that new self. So maybe that's something we could touch on. And if you have a fitness goal, you're like, okay, what is my body going to look like? What will it be able to do? If you have a goal of learning a language, do you want to speak fluently, read the newspaper, write poetry, win an equivalent of a Pulitzer in that country? Right? So for who you are as a being, if you consider that definition spiritual, or at least in part, let's get that defined. And let's be real, like, hey, this is a few components, say 5 components. Component 1 might take 300 hours. Component 2 might be just a daily reminder of a habit. Component 3 might be a certain lifestyle tweak. Component 4 might be working on your language. And when your language is consistently in line without you having to think or effort, then it's in line, and you can design 20 hours of work in 10-minute chunks with affirmations or similar to shift your language. And then you could say the last component for fun is maybe a certain mystical ability that sounds interesting. Manifestation is, really fits everything. And it could be any of those. It could be one thing. It could be more than 5. And I think just treating this in a very practical way, what self do you wish to be, and what needs to happen for you to get there? And in this moment, and based on your life's path, what would be a good resource to support you in that shift?
So helpful, so powerful. Thank you so much for grounding into that so well, and so because it comes across so potent, and pure, and just, again, I can receive that. I can't wait to re-listen to this like 3 times over minimum.
That state that I'm more in now.
Yeah.
If you look at my Facebook page, it's facebook.com/David Magic Solomon. There might be a dot between the words. There's a Krishna channeling and a Thoth channeling, and those were also in a similar, I think actually in a much higher state of awareness. And there's a lot of videos on Magical Golden Age. There's some stuff on YouTube, and Instagram's usually a shorter version of stuff elsewhere. But there's a lot, and it's really wonderful offering from this space. And 2 offers came in to make a TV show in the last week. So if you hear of anybody else who would like, to do an interview or a series, an intro would be really appreciated, so I can serve more.
100%. I have so many people that I would love to connect you with. So I 100% would love to do that, because your message is so potent, it's so powerful, and you being able to provide this, I'm just like, I'm sitting here receiving it. You're a wealth of knowledge and embodiment and integration of your craft, and it's so powerful, and it's an honor to be able to be on this side of it and to be a part of it, and just to hear you speak. So thank you so much so far for sharing all of your knowledge and all of your time, and everything that you have and all of your magic. There was one thing that I wanted to tap on real quick before we kind of get to the end of our time together, and it was just about kind of what we were talking about before, of this being able to coexist with other people who aren't necessarily on the same path or the same awareness that we are. This is something that I actually was just integrating with my family over the past month, and it was a really big, actually it's been going on since I've been on this journey, and it was sometimes part of it was in my boyfriend's he's more, I hate calling him boyfriend, it's like hobby, it is what it is. But anyways, partner, yes, my partner. So he, we went through this for a couple years within his family, and then I was meeting this with my family about the past month and a half, and it's a really interesting situation, because when you have this awareness, the things, right? Boundaries, what you need, what you desire, when things feel toxic or unhealthy, or that, right, on this level, and you have the capacity to say, okay, well then I don't need it, I can shut this off, and that's a place that I've kind of been at. But also I have a daughter, and having having these relationships and having these people in our life has also become important. And it's become more important for me to meet almost a new level of me where I can coexist with other people at a level and almost meet them where they are while maintaining myself and my energy and what I know and what I need. But meeting people and being able to coexist with other and reintegrating that part back into my life. And that was something that I was actually pretty closed off to for a while. If I'm being totally transparent with all of the people who are listening, like that was something I was kind of closed off to in some capacity, but I'm open to that now. And I know that there's so many other people that come to me, whether they have children, because I have a lot of mothers that I work with, and they also have people that they don't feel that they can necessarily cut off. And not that they can't, but maybe they don't desire to, or there's just people that they love or spouses that don't get it, and they're on their entrepreneurial journey or they're on their spiritual journey and they just don't understand. And so I'm curious on what your take is and how you navigate this and how you support people and being able to coexist with other people who are on just a different frequency than they are. Yeah.
Well, a quote I used to hate and now understand is, and this is not meant to be all encompassing. This is a quote for quote's sake. This isn't like David's advice. But in this context, you could take it as a thing is, somebody often said, somebody once said, a key to happiness is lowered expectations. And I thought, wow, that feels so pessimistic.
Wow.
But to take that as a reframe, because it is kind of a pessimistic and cynical quote, but to have it as a reference, like, okay, what's the light side of that? If this world is a school, and in the mindfulness, respecting boundaries, consent, kindness, open-hearted, loving kindness, eye-gazing, words of love and affection, not blaming or judging or labeling others, choosing what's right, not choosing victim or blame or self-pity, not choosing anger, all these things that are part of just, you could say being a mature adult, being a mindful spiritual person, taking away all the language for a second about, oh, my spirit guide said this, and somebody's like, oh, Jesus said that. That's individual application. But in this school, maybe in one of those settings, you're a PhD and somebody else is in third grade. Maybe there's a life topic where the roles are switched and you're just learning and they're mastering it. And it doesn't really make sense to expect a third grader to act at a PhD level in certain settings.
Yeah.
Now, it's condescending for the PhD to talk down to the third grader. The PhD can use vocabulary that the third grader understands, but not condescend. And if the third grader, runs up and like punches them on the shoulder, which can be like a verbal attack or a subtle manipulation or, any of the things people of, many awarenesses can do, the mature PhD thing to do is say, hey, that's not okay. And if you're feeling playful, you can surrender I'm a lofty PhD and, play back and punch back and, do some roughhousing and expand out of your comfort zone and realize it's not a maturity, it's just playfulness. I'm mostly gay, and I never, for a long time, didn't get jocks. I didn't get like the insults that they would throw at each other until I realized this is just having tough skin. This is just messing around. I went to Mount Shasta with a really good friend a few weeks ago, and road tripping with somebody, spend a lot of time with them. You see each other in all phases. And at one point, he was like making fun of me for something, but I knew he loved me and he was good and kind and loving. And he just said it to like bring my awareness to that. And so I threw it back at him, and then we both just laughed. I'm like, oh, I finally get it. It's not, that stuff that the jocks do isn't an insult. It's camaraderie, and it's actually maybe their way of raising awareness. And I know I'm stereotyping, but just for a simple example, right? So for family, they could be at any grade at any moment. And if you expect them to be like the people who, you would want to see in a workshop or you would want to see in a podcast, you're essentially in that moment projecting onto them and being unfair to them. Maybe they have that same expectation for you. They think you should be a certain way. And maybe the highest level both of you can get to is sophomore year of college in this map. And you're taking completely different curriculums, but maybe that's just where both of you can get to, because regressing amongst family members is common. Like, people see us and respond in a certain way. There's so much there that we don't really have time to get into. Yeah. And if that means you need to prepare, you need to cleanse, you need to write yourself a little note and then go to the bathroom every 45 minutes and read the note and realign. Like, whatever you have to do, but practice makes progress. And it could be a goal to be your full authentic self within some reasonable time frame. Maybe it's 20 family encounters, and after 20 you're your full self. And treat it like a performance review, right? Look at your last one and say you were your full self maybe 5% of the time. Okay, cool. No judgment, no blame, no shame, no story. Next time your goal is to be fully authentic 10%. And if it's 15, 20, 30, great. And if it's 5, okay, like go back to re-strategizing mode. So, this doesn't have to be difficult. This doesn't have to be challenging or impossible. Of course, if there's an extreme scenario, treat it differently. But, I love honoring you as a mother and a warrior and a goddess and a badass. And you are all those things, regardless of who sees you as them in any moment. And the more you know that, the more you really own it.
Thank you so much for saying that and speaking so much that I'm like, yes, I'm receiving that. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's, you worded that so beautifully and so perfectly. And I think that that's something, again, that we can all take in and look at the people that we love and in any capacity and say, is this a relationship that I want to have? Is this a relationship I desire to have? Is this one that I could see being healthy even if I could meet them at that place? And I think there's definitely those questions, because I mean, gosh, every relationship is so different and there's so many different varieties of them. And if it's a healthy one that you feel like there is this healing and this is available for you and it can be, great for you, then beautiful. And also I love being able to utilize that perspective shift in being able to look at things in a teaching's perspective of like PhD in third grade. Like we can totally look at that with any person in our life and be able to see, well, where maybe are they at? How can I meet them at that space? How can we come to common ground and
Right, and
coexist together?
maybe they're a master disguise. Maybe there's some other aspect of consciousness that's coming into them in the moment you're interacting. Maybe they're regressing and that's not their true self. Maybe if you have the courage to show up as your true self and talk with the soul in them, that their mask of a third grader that maybe they were to feel safe around family falls away, and they're actually a PhD too, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many possibilities. I was on and I know we're about over time and I have something scheduled soon too, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll do another episode and we'll just
I'd love
schedule it
that.
right after this. That happened to me actually twice. I was doing a podcast and somebody's like, let's keep on going for double. Another was like, let's just schedule another one for tomorrow. So whatever.
You're a wealth of like there's just so much here. We could go in for days. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to. We can make a series.
I love it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
sister. But it was one thing like to share. Like I went on this retreat and it was like a spiritual study thing. I was thinking about exploring my Jewish heritage more, so it was in Jerusalem. And there was this guy I'll call Gabe, and Gabe was like really obnoxious, really immature. At least that's what I perceived. Interrupting and just like very not like kind of spazzy. And I remember at one point like commenting on it, and I remember him commenting, "Oh, did I ask for feedback?" I'm like, wow, that was such a higher level response, how it was said and the words compared to what I remember from last week. I'm holding the projection, I'm projecting it onto him, but he's not reflecting that in this moment. And maybe that for him was like a 200 IQ and he's normally at a 70, or maybe he was joking around and he's always at a 200 IQ, and my inner discomfort with spazziness and silliness saw him as somebody lower. So it can be really a lot more complex, and it's just easier to stay in your own alignment and respond to what is, and just notice if you see somebody from a lens of past story, to surrender that unless both of you invite it in, or it just makes more rational sense to, like, they're holding a kid. Okay, the story probably goes that it's their kid, but like who they are and how they are and what they want, just being present. And it's actually really nourishing. It takes almost no effort to be present once you already are. And it's like momentum versus inertia. To start that boulder rolling, that inertia might take a lot of work, but to keep it rolling is less. Yes. So if you can get in that state, it's easier to stay in that state. And so they think you're weird. Everybody thinks everyone's weird, but if you feel more real, maybe they'll shift, maybe not. But if you can walk out of there, stronger than when you walked in, with just by holding a certain vibration, Awesome.
Yeah, I will say that anytime I go into a situation and I just focus on my alignment and my energy and just being in my power and not trying to fix, force, or like change or see, I leave feeling in power. I leave feeling good, at the root of it, just good. And any time that I feel like maybe I know better or my ego gets the best of me and I don't respond, or maybe I project because I am a projector. So sometimes like if I project uninvited, then I feel that. Like I feel that when I leave, and it's like this heavy weight, and I'm like, that's not what I'm here to do. And it's just like that knowing. So again, that's so thank you for
Yeah.
all of this. We definitely need, I have like a whole other page. I'm like, these are the things I
Okay,
wanted
well,
to talk.
let's go
That's
ahead and
okay.
schedule it then. Yeah, cool.
We'll do it another time. But something that I always close this up with and close this space up with and hold space for, because I love to bring these vibrations here, is honoring a celebration and honoring something that you're celebrating right now. So is there anything that you're doing, creating, you're putting into the world, you're experiencing right now that you are so excited to celebrate?
Mm. Yeah, I'm really excited and grateful to celebrate the fact that there's a lot of liberation and healing and freedom happening in the relationship and sexuality space in the world.
Mm,
That there's a lot more maturity, there's a lot more loving kindness, there's a lot more people who are coming to be of service, and there's a lot more certifications so that people are doing that with quality. I think our world really needs that.
yeah.
And while there are, our culture loves to celebrate scandals, there are so many people who do really good work. And while only certain types of work are legal, I feel that as a civilization, we don't, cover these topics in school. We cover, in
Mm-hmm.
primary school and public school, we cover like the very, very basics,
Yeah.
but in how to be in like a rich, loving relationship, or how to have like best, great, happy, playful, awesome, free sexual experiences that, you'd like to have on your own or with somebody else. There's a flourishing of that right now. And that's so great when it comes from, the right aligned place and stays there. And it needs definitely a container where, it can stay serving from alignment, but that container is building and developing. And I'm really grateful that a lot of that is happening, because there's so much shame in that topic and there's so much taboo around that topic.
Yeah.
But even just love and loving connection with another person and eye gazing and deep rich connection and conversation, the fact that that's coming more full circle, that we're realizing the technology addiction stuff and realizing what rich relationships are and can be. I'm really, really grateful for like our civilization that's happening and growing.
I think that's a beautiful celebration. I couldn't agree more. It's something that I didn't even realize. You don't realize how suppressed it is until actually one of my girlfriends, I think that's how we connected, Olivia Celine. She is a wonderful, she has her own podcast as well, but she's part of Soul in the Raw. We're on Soul in
I
the
think I
Raw
was
with,
on the podcast.
were you on them with
I'm
her
pretty
and
sure I
Shannon?
was on Soul in the Raw. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's how
Yeah.
we can, I think that they connected me to you, and I was like, yes, I need to talk to him. And so Olivia does wonderful work in this realm, and that's where I was kind of like awoken to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. This is so needed. And I celebrate this too, and I celebrate the world and in general, just going up and being able to have this level of consciousness as well. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much for such a beautiful conversation. This was just so epic in all of the ways, and I'm so excited for everybody to hear this. And now that they are so in love with your energy and they know so much more about you and they want to get a little bit deeper into your knowing and your work. I know you mentioned a couple times, and I'll put it also in the show notes, but is there, where can they go and find you? Where's the easiest place to
Yeah.
connect with you?
The easiest thing is to go on magicalgoldenage.com
Okay,
and go to contact.
beautiful.
Very simple. It'll just send me an email. And just to flesh out the ecosystem of digital stuff I have out there, on Magical Golden Age, there's an about page. I have some traditional stuff on my LinkedIn that's linked through there. I have a lot of the magic spiritual stuff. There's a lot of videos. I have a wizard school that I'm going to be upgrading soon, but there's a lot of videos on that. My Instagram is Sorcerer David, and there's a lot of videos on there. There's like general Instagrammy posts, but there's like richer videos I post on there too. And then Facebook, Facebook is primarily where I do my lives. So facebook.com/David Magic Solomon, or just David Solomon. I'm actually wearing this shirt in the profile photo, so it'll
I
be
love it.
easy to pick it out. And so, you're just scrolling through the feed, seeing things, or just messaging me. Facebook messages can get filtered, but I actually check the filters pretty often. And I'd say, I have youtube.com/magic is real, and, love doing podcasts and showing up everywhere. And I'd say really, if somebody wants to get in touch, I'd say the best thing is just, tune in, align, go to Magical Golden Age, go to contact, and just drop me a quick line. We don't have to figure everything out instantly. It doesn't have to look like a certain thing. It could just be, hey, can you follow up with me in 2 weeks? My life is full right now. But we all know how, a wish or a to-do can fall off the list. So I'd say if this is important to you to get in touch or to ask a certain question, reach out and we'll see what can come from it. And I also have a patreon.com/magicaljoy. And I do love and healing rituals for people on a regular basis who are patrons on there.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have no doubt that there is going to be an abundance of people and humans that are going to come and just be in your energy and learn more and just reach out and contact you. And I really hope that they do, because you're magic. So you really are.
As above, so below. From your lips, may it be so.
I love that. Oh, this was so much fun. Thank you so much, David, for being here and again, sharing your time and your space and your energy and all of that you are. So I can't wait for a part 2, but thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.